What up, Mojos? Joe Rivera here with Sporting News, cordially inviting you to the 2021 Madden NFL Draft Simulation presented by Sporting News, also known as the season debut of How Are the Jets Going to Screw This Up This Year? We all know the deal, folks. 5 quarterbacks could go in the first round this year, all led by Clemson's Trevor Lawrence. It's widely expected to go number 1 to Jacksonville. Does Madden feel the same way? Let's find out. Jacksonville, you're on the clock. Folks, we all know Jacksonville has been in quarterback hell for the better part of their existence, right? They turned over to Gardner Minshew in the last few years, and he gave them a little bit of a spark. But is he a real franchise guy? Probably not. When you go 1-15 in a season, you lose 15 straight games in a row, I don't think you're a franchise guy. And I don't think Jacksonville really feels that way either. They're turning to Urban Meyer this year. 5 seconds, still a new era. Let's see what Madden says about the new Jacksonville quarterback.
The Jets are now on the clock.
Unsurprising, it is Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence at number 1 overall. Even Madden won't screw that up with how bad their games have been. But unsurprising here, Urban Meyer wants a guy who's viewed as a generational quarterback. Everybody has seen what Trevor Lawrence can do with a cast around him, and he's a guy that's long been heralded as that type of prospect. So, Chad Pennington, Mark Sanchez, Sam Darnold. Could Zach Wilson be the next quote-unquote savior of the Jets franchise? We saw it end poorly with Sam Darnold last year after 3 years of really organizational malpractice, and the team didn't really do anything to help him out. Now we see, is the BYU quarterback going to be number 2 overall? Does Madden think that? We'll see what the Jets think at number 2 overall. 3, 2, 1.
The 49ers
and the
are
pick
now on the
is
clock.
BYU quarterback Zach Wilson. Wow. It's interesting to note that Justin Fields was widely regarded as a QB2 entering this draft cycle, and after the show we put on in the college football playoff versus Clemson, a lot of people felt that maybe he regained that number 2 spot, but nope. The pre-draft process has played out in favor of Zach Wilson. The next Jets quarterback, the next quarterback they're going to try and view, take him to a Super Bowl since Joe Namath. Will the 49ers make it 3 for 3 on quarterbacks? San Francisco made the biggest splash of the draft season so far, trading 2 future first-round picks to the Dolphins in exchange for the number 3 overall pick. Dolphins moved all the way back to 12 where the 49ers are sitting, and rumors say that the 49ers want Mac Jones at 3, which is kind of a head-scratcher, right? We'll see what Madden has to say about it, but I find it hard to believe that San Francisco will take anyone but a quarterback at number 3 when the real draft rolls around. We'll see what Madden has to say about it now.
The Falcons are now on the clock.
Wow. 49ers did not opt for a quarterback at number 3 overall, instead taking Oregon offensive tackle Penei Sewell. Sewell sat out in 2020, but a lot of people like his upside. The last time we saw him play was at age 19. So plenty of room for growth for Sewell, but it doesn't really solve their quarterback problem now, does it? Whether it was Fields or Jones or Trey Lance sitting in that spot, it seems odd for a team to want to continue forward with Jimmy Garoppolo when that relationship seems fractured, but our first true surprise of the 2021 Madden NFL Draft. We'll see what happens next. Well, we were surprised with the number 3 overall pick with Penei Sewell going over to San Francisco, not a quarterback. Will the Falcons surprise us and take a quarterback at number 4 overall? Some rumors say Justin Fields is destined to be a Falcon. Who knows? Matt Ryan recently had his contract restructured that'll keep him there for at least another year. Maybe Fields sits behind Matt Ryan and learns a little bit from the next few years. We'll see what the Falcons do at number 4 overall.
The Bengals are now on the clock.
Wide receiver Jamar Chase, LSU product who sat out of the 2020 college football season, is going to Atlanta. Now, that's a little bit of a surprise. I hope they're playing with 2 footballs down there, considering the team already has Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones out wide. And adding Chase is certainly an embarrassment of riches. A little bit of a curious pick. Most people would have expected maybe Kyle Pitts to play down there and really help strengthen that tight end position, but Hard to argue with Chase being the first wide receiver off the board here. We'll see what the Bengals do now that one of the top wide receivers and the top offensive linemen are both off the board, number 5. Quarterback Joe Burrow's rookie season was cut short with a devastating knee injury, so common sense would have dictated that Cincinnati take a lineman here, right? But with Penei Sewell off the board, it's tough to see where they go. Do they take Kyle Pitts at number 5 and further strengthen the offense? Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow hooked up at LSU when they played down there together, and Chase was widely regarded as the number 1 wide receiver coming out. He's first one off the board. We'll see what the Bengals do. Number 5 overall.
The Dolphins are now on the
The
clock.
unicorn of the NFL draft cycle, Florida tight end Kyle Pitts. is going to Cincinnati, and that should be a fun pairing for years to come to watch in Cincinnati. With A.J. Green now out of the picture, heading down to Arizona, Joe Burrow is going to need that number one guy. T. Higgins had a very good rookie year alongside Burrow, played out a little bit, but hard to argue with taking tight end at number 5, especially one at the caliber of Kyle Pitts. I mean, that's going to be just a fun duo to watch in Cincinnati. The Dolphins made one of the most interesting moves of the pre-draft cycle this year, trading out of the number 3 overall spot with San Francisco and then trading back up to the number 6 overall spot with the Eagles. So they clearly have their eye on an offensive talent here. Does Madden seem to think that too? I don't know. But Devontae Smith would be a very good pick for them at number 6. It'll reunite Tua Tagovailoa with Smith, 2 Alabama boys. Let's see what Madden has to say about it. It is Devontae Smith. Smith really showed out this year. His combination of speed and route running is really out of this world, and pairing him again with Tua is going to be very, very helpful with Tua in his second year with the Dolphins. And some people had questions of whether or not he was going to be the guy of the future. Tua's going to get another shot. He's going to get a fair shot without Ryan Fitzpatrick there in Miami. And Smith is going to be a big part of his development moving forward. The Lions made the first blockbuster move of the offseason this year, trading quarterback Matthew Stafford to the Rams in exchange for Jared Goff and future first-round picks. Is Goff the future in Detroit? Who knows? That's really the best you can say about Jared Goff, right? After being paired with a brilliant mind like Sean McVay, it's hard to see where his career goes from here. Obviously, it wasn't, and his future wasn't long for Los Angeles, especially after the way the season ended. We'll see if the Lions opt to stick with Goff or take a passer here.
The Panthers are now on the clock.
Micah Parsons, linebacker from Penn State. Now, there's an interesting pick. We know Dan Campbell's going to want guys that are going to bite kneecaps. And I think Parsons is that guy. He's got great sideline-to-sideline speed. He's a guy that's going to be a thumper in the middle of that defense. And interestingly enough, he's a guy that Nick Saban at Alabama missed out on, and Parsons decided to go to Penn State. When Nick Saban likes you as a linebacker, you must be pretty good. Good pick for Detroit. Matt Rule and the Carolina Panthers made a splash acquiring Jets quarterback Sam Darnold just last week. We'll see what the Panthers do with this pick at number 8. They could certainly use offensive line help to try and protect Darnold. With Joe Brady and the offensive skill position players, especially Christian McCaffrey, Darnold's going to have some toys to play with there, but he certainly needs to be protected. We'll see what the Panthers do at number 8. Is it too early for Christian Darrisaw? Potentially. There's not really enough offensive linemen. The pick is in.
The Broncos.
Rashawn Slater. So the Panthers were thinking about offensive line help, and they're bookending him with Taylor Moton, who re-signed in Carolina this offseason. And it's a solid pick. I mean, it's hard to argue against it. He's one of the top tackles on the board, along with Virginia Tech's Christian Darrisaw. So good on Carolina for strengthening the offensive line, not going for a flashy weapon in the offense for Sam Darnold early on. Joe Brady's going to figure out what to do with that scheme, with that talent that he has now. It's worth noting that we're at pick 9 now, and 3 of the projected first-round talent quarterbacks, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields, are all still on the board. Crazy to think for Denver, quarterback-needy team who doesn't really look to believe in Drew Lock, even though he finished out the 2020 season strong. John Elway's had a really rough go of it trying to find that next quarterback after Peyton Manning won them a Super Bowl. Do they take a passer here? We'll see what Madden has to say about it. Common sense would indicate yes, but common sense is not so common.
The Cowboys are now on the clock.
So surprising development here. Gregory Rousseau out of Miami is the first of the 2 Miami edge rushers selected in this draft. Now, everybody expected Jalen Phillips to go before Rousseau, and Rousseau's pro day was a bit awkward to watch in that he was stiffer than a 2x4 during his drills. So with a pass rush that features Von Miller and Bradley Chubb now adding Rousseau to the mix, it could be fun to watch, especially with Von Miller entering the latter stages of his career. How about them Cowboys? Dak is back. Jerry Jones and company are looking to win a Super Bowl here with Mike McCarthy at the helm after a pretty up-and-down season last year, especially after Dak went out with that gruesome ankle injury. Where do they need help? They need help defensively. Their offensive line is still very good. Dak doesn't need any more weapons. If I had to guess here, I think they're going cornerback. I think Patrick Surtain out of Alabama is going to be the pick here. It makes a lot of sense for both sides.
The Giants.
And it is Patrick Surtain out of Alabama. Another Alabama DB making the jump to the NFL. Now, Some people think Surton's a little bit slower than what he showed at his pro day. But, big kid, lengthy kid, can certainly play. Alabama defenses are always fun to watch. Nick Saban knows what he's doing down there, especially after losing some secondary pieces in the last few years. Dallas certainly needs to help on the back end, so it's a smart pick for Dallas here. The New York Football Giants sit with the number 11 overall pick, and where could they go? This team is actually pretty solid, all things considered. Joe Judge did a very good job in his first year. Dave Gettleman seems to have put the Fire Gettleman critics aside, at least for one season, especially after a big offseason in which they acquired Kenny Golladay for big money. Where do they go? If I had to guess, again, I'd say pass rusher here makes a lot of sense for them. Pair him with Leonard Williams up front, had a breakout year. But other than that, they're a pretty solid team.
The Eagles are now on the
Jalen
clock.
Waddle. Wow, that's an interesting pick. Again, I hope they're playing with two footballs at the Meadowlands because between Waddle, Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton, and Sterling Shepard, that's a lot of receiving talent. But the good thing is Daniel Jones will have zero excuses now moving forward. Has to take care of the ball. He has to stop throwing the dumb interceptions. He has to hold on to the football too. I think Waddle is a pick of excess here for them. I think they could have gone pass rusher, but hard to complain with that much offensive weaponry in a pass-happy league. Fly, Eagles, fly on the road to misery. This offseason has been hell for Eagles fans, and Philly fans don't really deserve it. You trade away Carson Wentz. You fire Doug Peterson. Everything's chaos. Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria. What do they do at 12? They could certainly use the help on the back end. Caleb Farley's still available, though there's some questions about his back coming off surgery this offseason. We'll see what the Eagles do here at this pick.
The Chargers are now
J.C.
on the clock.
Horn out of South Carolina. Sure enough, the Eagles are shoring up the back end. Jalen Hurts is going to be the answer for them moving forward, at least for a year. Head coach Nick Sirianni, entering his first year, said some kind of nice things about Hurts in intro press conferences. But for an Eagles team that had been suffering on the back end, pick like J.C. Horn certainly makes a lot of sense. The Los Angeles Chargers, by way of San Diego, rung in a new era with a massive rookie year from Justin Herbert, who a lot of people thought maybe should have gone before Tua Tagovailoa, but that's all in the past now. Herbert needs help, and he needs help up front. I think the Chargers should probably take an offensive lineman here. He's got Keenan Allen. Yeah, he lost Hunter Henry in free agency to the Patriots this year, but Herbert seems like a guy who can make it work with whoever he's got around him. Let's see what the Chargers take. Number 13.
The Vikings are
And
now
it is
on the
left
clock.
tackle Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech. Darrisaw was considered by many to be the best offensive lineman in this draft, in a very deep class of offensive linemen too. So going at number 13 to the Chargers makes a lot of sense, especially for a team who needs the help in the offensive line. So Herbert gets his protector of the future, and away we go, Los Angeles. Give credit where credit is due. Kirk Cousins played out of his mind last year, and he was doing it with an offensive line that was less than good. And we all know that Justin Johnson had a great first year with Kirk Cousins throwing him the ball. So don't be surprised if the Vikings here go offensive line again. AVT, Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC would be a very smart pick for them here. For a team that's been suffering on the interior, we'll see what they do. Pick number 14.
The Patriots
And it is
are now
Vera
on the
Tucker
clock.
out of USC, and he's widely considered to be a very, very good guard. So this is a smart move for the Vikings. Madden has it right here. Kirk Cousins certainly needs the help. Last year, the Vikings took Garrett Bradbury with, I want to say, the 15th overall pick. So certainly makes sense to continue strengthening that offensive line, especially when you consider how much they rely on Dalvin Cook up front, who needs that help in the offensive line, and Kirk Cousins, who isn't the most mobile guy, but he certainly needs the help too. It's the NFL's worst nightmare. Bill Belichick can select his quarterback of the future at pick number 15 with Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Mac Jones all still on the board. Cam Newton had a pretty rough season throwing the ball last year, but he was very good on the ground. And Bill Belichick and the Patriots made a lot of noise in free agency, bringing in Jonnu Smith, bringing in Hunter Henry, Nelson Aguilar. We'll see where they go with this pick. Money's on quarterback, but not too sure.
The Cardinals are now on the clock.
Cornerback Caleb Farley out of Virginia Tech. As mentioned before, Caleb Farley is a guy that's coming off back surgery, but widely considered to be one of the top 3 cornerbacks in this draft, no matter how you rank him. And pairing him with Stephon Gilmore, probably one of the best defensive backs in all the league. certainly shores up the defensive side of the ball. Now, this means that obviously the Patriots are going to be sticking with Cam Newton for another year, according to Madden at least, and given their offseason moves, it certainly makes sense playing to Newton's strengths. Thank God the Patriots didn't take a quarterback. The Arizona Cardinals made a lot of moves this offseason, headlined by bringing in J.J. Watt, who announced the deal himself on Twitter in a Cardinal shirt while lifting something presumably the size of a Volkswagen. So, where the Cardinals go from here, it's tough to say. They could certainly use help on the defensive side. Everybody could, especially with all these mobile quarterbacks and the good quarterbacks in the NFC West. Let's see what they do at pick number 16.
The Raiders are now on
Azeez Ojulari, pass rusher out of Georgia. Now, this guy he's a big guy, big kid, strong kid. He's certainly going to help with their pass rush, especially considering that they need that help. They need the help there, and they brought back Hassan Reddick, and they need to get after Russell Wilson, and I think that's what this pick is focused on in the NFC West. Is if Russell Wilson's going to be there for another year, they need a guy that's going to be able to get after Wilson, and that pass rush is certainly going to help them in their quest for an NFC West title. Vegas, baby. Las Vegas on the clock at pick number 17, and they made some curious moves this offseason, to say the least, trading away Trent Brown, trading away Gabe Jackson, really tearing down that entire offensive line for no real good reason, considering that was arguably the best part of their team last year. So we'll see if they have eyes on the future with offensive line here, but the pickings are starting to get slim on offensive linemen, at least first-round talent. We'll see what John Gruden, Mike Mayock, and the rest of the Raiders say, and it is Jalen Mayfield, right tackle out of Michigan. Now, Mayfield's a guy that was high on a lot of people's boards, so this certainly makes sense. Now, he might not have tested as well as people have liked, but it's still a smart pick for Las Vegas moving forward. If the Miami Dolphins and Madden is any indication, then they're certainly sticking with Tua for at least year 2. And that would make a lot of sense because it seems a little too quick to pull the trigger on and pull the plug on the Tua experiment in Miami. So at pick number 18, their second first-round pick of the 2021 NFL Draft, I mean, certainly a lot of things that they could use here. Offensive line help is probably at the top of that list. Tua seems to have enough weapons. We'll see what Miami does and Chris Greer and General Manager Chris Greer do at pick number 18. Kwity Paye, defensive end out of Michigan. Now this is another pass rusher in this class who is widely considered one of the best in this draft and best pass rushers altogether in this class. So Miami really strengthening the defense under Brian Flores. It does make sense, especially when you consider that they're going to be challenging the Bills for the division crown, and then they're going to have someone to get after Josh Allen and get after Cam Newton in that division. No one worry about the Jets and Zach Wilson yet, though. Ron Rivera and the Washington football team are bringing in Ryan Fitzpatrick to solve their quarterback woes, letting go of former first-round pick Dwayne Haskins in the middle of the season last year after some strip club shenanigans, and moving on from Alex Smith, who told media that he threw a wrench in their plans. So we'll see. With 3 quarterbacks left on the board, does Washington pick a passer of the future? The answer to that question is no. Picking wideout Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. He's maybe not a burner, but he has a good mix of size and route running ability that makes him a very, very good target for Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's not afraid to really sling the ball around. So it makes a lot of sense for them right now. Pairing him with scary Terry McLaurin out of Ohio State, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch if Bateman really develops. Bears fans, if you don't take a quarterback, I will fire virtual Ryan Pace for you. There are 3 future passers on the board here at pick number 20, and in no way, no real world would that actually happen, especially this year with 3 future franchise passers. The team is going to be relying this year on Andy Dalton, which, relying on Andy Dalton in the year 2021 is kind of like relying on your 1986 Civic to get you to 7-Eleven without any issues.
The Colts are now on the
Tevin
clock.
Jenkins, more offensive line help for the Bears. Certainly, common sense would indicate that the Bears would take a quarterback here, and I think that if any of those 3 passers were to make it to number 20 overall, I think they would jump all over that, especially considering the trouble that they had with Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles last year, and now turning to Andy Dalton and losing out on Carson Wentz and Sam Darnold not being in the cards. So certainly a curious selection. It's always hard to argue against offensive line help, but Seems strange for Ryan Pace and co to pass up on a franchise passer there at pick number 20. The Indianapolis Colts are really, really banking on the Frank Reich and Carson Wentz reuniting to prove fruitful this year. And it could happen. It really could. Now without having to worry about someone breathing down his neck, we'll see if Carson Wentz can revert to MVP form. But the injury bug was still an issue with Wentz. Obviously, last year he had issues with turnovers. But Frank Reich is supposedly the remedy for all that. We'll see where the Colts go at pick number 21.
The Titans are now on the clock.
Here's a little bit of a surprise. Seems like a little bit of a reach. Sam Cosmi out of Texas. Now, he's not a guy who's super flashy athletically, but he does have a little bit of versatility. But most people don't believe he's a first-round prospect. So they're going to try and plug in that left tackle spot left by Anthony Costanzo, who retired, and try and help Carson Wentz and really protect him. But it seems like a little bit of a reach. I wouldn't expect this on draft day. It's especially not in the first round. But the Colts love him, so we'll see where it goes. Tennessee Titans are coming off a pretty disappointing end to their year. A lot of people pegged them to go to the Super Bowl this year. They're pretty ready to compete still. Mike Vrabel looks pretty good in that driver's seat there. They did lose offensive coordinator Arthur Smith to Atlanta. He's going to be the new head coach there. But this team is still driven by one man and one man only, and that's Derrick Henry. So we'll see what the Titans do to try and shore up the defense. You could certainly use pass rush help here at pick number 22.
The Jets are now on the
Liam Eichenberg. Now here's an interesting pick. Notre Dame isn't really foreign to offensive line help in the National Football League, right? We know Mike McGlinchey, Ronnie Stanley. We know all these guys. Quentin Nelson. But Eichenberg is an interesting prospect in that a lot of people don't believe that he's going to be a true left tackle, so moving him over to right tackle would probably make a lot of sense at the next level. But he's also not a guy who is expected to go in the first round, so interesting choice by the Titans here, by the Madden Titans, to pick Eichenberg going number 22 overall. The Jets got their passer of the future with the number 2 overall pick and Zach Wilson, and now with their second first-round pick, we'll see where they go here. They have to do something to support this kid, whether that's a wide receiver or offensive line help. At this point, though, unless the Jets are really reaching on offensive line, it's tough to see where they go, especially too with key cornerbacks off the board already. Where do the Jets go at pick number 23? Let's find out.
The Steelers are now.
And it is offensive line help with Oklahoma center Creed Humphrey. Humphrey's a guy that a lot of people thought would go in the third round before the draft cycle really started. And then he shot up draft boards, and now anybody has him in between the second and third round, maybe an early 2, maybe a very early 3. Who knows? But the Jets, at least a virtual Joe Douglas is correct, are doing a lot to help Zach Wilson out up front. This offseason, they signed Corey Davis to play wide receiver, and now they're reinforcing the offensive line. That's what you need to help your future quarterback succeed. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Here we go, Steelers with the number 24 overall pick. And who's it going to be? Ben Roethlisberger certainly entering the twilight of his career here. Could they pick a quarterback to sit behind Ben for a year? Do they pick a running back, maybe Travis Etienne out of Clemson, to really help them with their running game? No, that might not be a bad idea. You usually want to stay away from taking running backs in the first round now. Only benefit is the fifth-year option. We'll see what the Steelers do. Number 24.
The Jaguars are now on the clock.
And it's Alabama running back Najee Harris. Now, Harris, who recently told Todd McShay to kiss his ass, is now a first-round prospect, and that's very intriguing for the Steelers, who have all the wide receiver talent in the world between Chase Claypool, bringing back Juju Smith-Schuster this past offseason, and they're really going to rely on Ben Roethlisberger to return to form, and hopefully Harris helps the running game out a lot. He might not have been the first running back off the board in a lot of drafts that usually reserved for Travis Etienne, but still a good pick for the Steelers, number 24. Could this be the start of a dynasty in Jacksonville? You got your franchise passer with Trevor Lawrence with the number 1 overall pick. Who do they take at pick number 25? Do they take a running back? Do they take Travis Etienne and reunite the two? That would be an interesting pick. Offensive line help is pretty much dried up at this point. Who do they take at 25? Who does Urban Meyer really like? Who does he want to help make a stamp on this team with? Let's find out.
The Browns are now on the clock.
Trevor Mayrig out of TCU is probably the best safety in this draft, and this isn't a really safety-deep draft. this year in 2021. So certainly shoring up the defensive end of the ball, that back half of safety can help a lot in a lot of defenses. Interesting pick. There's not really a lot else out there. Trevor Lawrence maybe could have used some offensive help. Maybe a wide receiver, Kadarius Toney, still out there, would certainly help him. But, hard to argue against picking a safety, especially the best one in this draft. The Cleveland Browns are going through a turnaround right now, and a lot of that is due to the advanced play of Baker Mayfield, and he really played out last year. A lot of moving pocket stuff, a lot of play action. That really helps him out a lot. Could they use a running back here? I think they could. Nick Chubb's certainly good. He's going to start for them still in the future, but, 1-2 punch in the backfield will certainly help them too. So we'll see what head coach Kevin Stefanski really likes here with the number 26 overall pick.
The Ravens are now on the clock.
Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame. This is a guy that gets a lot of comparisons to Isaiah Simmons. Currently playing with Arizona, and a lot of it's due to his body type. Where does he really play? He's kind of in between a safety and a linebacker. He's kind of that money backer hybrid role. So adding Jadeveon Clowney to the mix and having Myles Garrett up front, when you add another Swiss Army knife type player to that defense, certainly going to help him out a lot moving forward. A lot has been made about Lamar Jackson, Greg Roman, and the Baltimore Ravens offense. Now, everybody knows that Mark Andrews is pretty much Lamar Jackson's favorite target when he's not using his legs. So where do the Ravens go from here? Do they take a wide receiver at this spot? Do they try and shore up the offensive line? They already have 2 bookend tackles, and even if Orlando Brown Jr. wants out. So we'll see what Baltimore does here, pick number 27.
The Saints are now on the clock.
Carlos Basham Jr. Now, this is a smart pick for Baltimore, if not a little bit of a reach. Basham wasn't expected to go this high, but he's going to replace Matthew Judon in the pass rush role, which is certainly going to help them moving forward. But the question remains, how much more can Baltimore squeeze out of this offense without getting some definitive playmakers on that end? They missed out on Juju Smith-Schuster. They weren't big players for any of the other wide receivers this offseason. So we'll see where they go from here offensively. What's life like without Drew Brees? The Saints are about to find out, and they don't really have a pass to their future on the board here. There's 3 quarterbacks that they could take at pick number 28 in this Madden draft. That certainly won't happen on draft day, I can tell you that. But the Saints are an interesting case because it certainly looks like they're going to give the keys to one of 2, Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill, this upcoming season. We'll see what they do. Sean Payton certainly believes in those guys, and who are we to doubt Sean Payton, right?
The Packers are now on the clock.
Odighi Zua out of UCLA. Here's an interesting pick. Obviously, you'd think that the Saints, if given the option with 3 passers, would take either Lance Fields or Mac Jones there, right? Especially with the way that those guys are being talked about. So pretty interesting to see them go Odighi Zua here. They did lose Trey Hendrickson this offseason to Cincinnati, and they're certainly, Cam Jordan isn't getting any younger either, so they certainly want to keep their defensive pass rush going, but questionable at best with 3 top-tier talents in the first round still sitting there at passer. Well, one thing's for sure, I think it's safe to say that the Packers won't be taking a quarterback here, but this is Madden, so who really knows? But how much help could Aaron Rodgers possibly need? He certainly does need help, though. The Packers have been unwilling at best and negligent at worst in selecting wide receiver help for this guy in the first round, and everybody knew he wanted, and he said as much that he wanted a wide receiver last year, which he didn't get. So we'll see where the Packers go from here, and Brian Gutekunst and co.
The Bills are now on the clock.
Wyatt Davis does make a lot of sense here. He's a guy that a lot of people thought was probably the best guard coming out, and with Corey Linsley gone, playing in Los Angeles now, the Packers could certainly use that offensive line help, especially you also consider that they paid Aaron Jones the bag this offseason. So they're a team that's going to rely heavily on that offensive line to get it figured out. But, again, it's when you're Aaron Rodgers and you're asking for wide-out help, interesting that the Packers don't go wide-out here. Do you believe in miracles? Because Brian Dable worked one last year, turning Josh Allen into an MVP candidate. We'll see if they can keep that going, but the Buffalo Bills have provided a masterclass in how to support a young quarterback, unlike the New York Jets, but we've seen that in the past. The Bills went out and got Stephon Diggs last year. They loaded this team up with receiving talent. They left no doubt as to what Josh Allen is going to be. We'll see if he can keep it going, and we'll see who they pick here, pick number 30.
The Chiefs are now on the clock.
Quinn Miners out of Wisconsin Whitewater, nicknamed the Gut. This guy is probably going to be your favorite player's favorite offensive lineman, I can tell you that. Miners comes from a small school, but he's a nasty, nasty dude, and he's been rocketing up draft boards over the last month. So good on the Bills to continue to build that offensive line after some signings haven't really worked out. Maybe they could have used offensive line help, but strengthening the interior of that offensive line is always going to be a positive thing for any team. This pick should be about one thing and one thing only for the Chiefs, and that's offensive line help. Certainly, Patrick Mahomes looks like he can do it all, but we saw in Super Bowl 55 that he cannot do it all, and he can't do it all, especially without an offensive line. Now with Eric Fisher gone and Mitchell Schwartz out too, the Chiefs got to do something to shore up this offensive line. They took Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year with the number 32 overall pick. Let's see what they do this year.
The Buccaneers.
Alex Leatherwood, this is a guy that a lot of people thought was going to be one of the top offensive linemen coming out this year, and he's probably going to kick inside to guard, which will help them, but he can probably play both positions too. So smart for the Kansas City Chiefs to really shore up that offensive line, give Patrick Mahomes some help up front, because how much help does Patrick Mahomes really need? Your Super Bowl winning Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the 32 overall pick in this draft, and we all know that the 32nd pick is always pick of luxury because there's never any real holes for Super Bowl winning teams, right? So we'll see what Bruce Arians and Jason Light and the rest of this team really has in store for this pick. Tom Brady, they brought back all 22 starters from the Super Bowl winning team, so they won't really be hurting for starting help here. We'll see who they take at pick number 32.
The Jaguars are now
and it's cornerback Asante Samuel Jr. Now, here's an interesting pick, and he's a guy that a lot of people was slated for the second round. So the Bucs went out and they got him, and Asante Samuel Jr., depending on how you rank these guys, was considered to be one of the best cornerbacks in this draft. So interesting for them to take this pick, to take him here, and certainly going to help them on the back end, along Antoine Winfield Jr. And that'll do it for the 2021 Madden NFL Sim Draft. Now, it's important to note there are a lot of good players still available after this wacky, wild first round, including quarterbacks Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Mac Jones. Travis Etienne is still available. Kadarius Toney, wide receiver out of Florida, still available. Speedy guy. A lot of people compare him to Deebo Samuel. Jason Owe, pass rusher. Pat Freiermuth, tight end, probably the best tight end in this draft, not named Kyle Pitts. So there's still plenty of talent to be had. We'll see if it shakes out that way in 2 weeks at the NFL Draft.